Hello, and welcome to the DataMagik Demo. If you've ever spent hours, or even days, wrestling with uploads to have the data perfectly formatted and in its completeness to perform the upload, or sometimes you ran into a case where an upload simply wasn't available, then you know the frustration that inspired this tool. I created DataMagik while on a heavy implementation schedule. It seemed to me that without fail, for every project, there was a need to upload a massive amount of data, or I ran into the case of missing uploads. I still had to load the data, and more importantly, the data needed to be loaded without error. My options were either to load the data by hand, or have an RPA bot perform the entry, both of which took days. DataMagik gives days back to your life by shortening those activities from days or weeks to minutes. This gives you more time to fight the next fire, or, in my case, get a few more hours of sleep. In this video, I'll show you how DataMagik simplifies your data loading process, and we'll cover how to handle single data source usage, how to manage complex coordinated uploads with routines, and finally, load custom fields without the usual headaches. Let's dive in and see how it works. We're going to start with the data source run options. This first mode we're going to focus on are singles. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to select one of our pre-set up PCNs, which is directly linked to a web service credential. These web service credentials have a list of enabled data sources per credential. In the Data Sources tab here, we can see all of the data sources that have been enabled for this credential. If a credential does not show up, that means that it is not enabled, and you want to go back into Plex and enable the data source so that it can run for this specific web service credential. In this first case here, we're going to show you one of my favorite data sources to use. This is the part and attributes add update. Now, I typed the name of that into this data source tab here. Once I've selected that, my template button appears. I'm going to select template. On the right hand side here, this is our magic template. This has all of the fields available for the data source in this screen here, as well as what data type it is, if it's required or not, or if it's nullable. Okay, I'm going to download this template, save it to my desktop here, and I'm going to call this one template. Okay, I'm going to open up my desktop here. I have my template file here. I'm just going to expand the column so we can see it here and zoom in a little bit. So in this Excel sheet, this is our upload template. Each of these columns here represent a different input into this data source. Now, as you saw in the last kind of template preview screen, that it shows you the type of data that's required for this template. It shows you whether that data is required or not, or if it is nullable. Nullable means that it can either be in this data source kind of upload, or it could not be in the data source upload. It's truly an optional field. Now, with this specific data source, I can go in here and delete columns that I'm not going to use because they are nullable and they're not required. I'm going to select these columns here, delete out the columns I do not want, and then I'm going to do the same thing over here just to illustrate that you can remove the columns that you do not want to include in the data source. And then you're left with a smaller upload. Now, I've already taken the time and I've prepared an upload to walk through with you today. So in this upload, it's the same format here. I prepared 404 parts to upload into Plex. We've got our part, our revision, our name, our part type, and our part status. One of the really cool features with DataMagik is that you can embed these templates right inside of another Excel file. That's right. So if you have a really complicated spreadsheet for planning your minimum buys, your MOQs, or really anything else that you want to have from a calculation standpoint, this upload template could be in that Excel workbook somewhere. And DataMagik is going to find that upload template automatically as long as that tab is called Upload Template. Okay. It also ignores any columns that do not exist in the data source for the upload and only takes the column names that matter to the data source. Okay, so I'm going to select my file here. Oops, looks like I need to close it first. I'm going to open my file here. And then from here is a really important question. Do I want to send this to test or do I want to send this to production? I'm going to select test here for today. Notice it said test is selected. I'm going to select send. And this shows you a real-time send of how fast those data sources are going into Plex. If the data source supports it, which not all of them do, it will show you an error that appears in the file. And this error is for result codes of the data source. If it returns a -1, it shows up as an error. As this is running here, we're going to be able to take this file that is uploaded into Plex, and we're going to be able to take all the results of those uploads, which just finished here. We're going to be able to take this result, download it as a proof that you performed this upload. For this specific upload, it returns a couple of important things. You have your part keys. You have that result code that I spoke about, which could trigger an error in the application if it's a -1, just to show you that something doesn't quite match the data source's requirements. Okay. We have a result message. We have that it's sent. We have its web service transaction number. Each of these rows did represent a web service transaction. Okay. I'm going to select download results here. And you notice we have DataMagik result, and I'm just going to call it some parts. I'm going to upload my results here, just so you can see that this does translate over into the Excel file. If it shows me what my inputs were and all of my outputs that were potentially for this file. Now, if you had an error, one of the neat features with DataMagik is that you could simply remove all of the non-error records from this file, correct it in this DataMagik result table. You could even keep the other result messages and then send it right back to Plex. And because these columns are not included in the data source, it will just take your input records and upload them into Plex, and you'll have a brand new data set result. Okay, so that's one data source at a time, which is our single. Now there is another mode here that we support, which are routines. Now routines are available for you to manage. You can share routines for any routines that have been created in the application. For today's demo, I've prepared a routine, parts and routings upload. The part routing upload, it takes two separate data sources and then layers them together so that you can orchestrate adding your parts and then coming in behind that and adding all of your routings. These are added pretty simply. You can click Add, and then you define your sequence name, description, the order of the routine, and even the data source that you want to use. To use a routine, we want to go back to our Data Sources tab here. We want to select the PCN for the credentials, and then we want to select Routines. Routines will show us a list of all the routines that have been created in the application. We can see here on the right the two different sequences established in the routines. And these work pretty similarly to the single mode of this screen. So I'm going to click Open File. Select Open File, and then I'm going to select my part and attributes at update, which we have 404 records. I'm going to select my part operation add update here, and if I didn't already have my files here, I as well can select template from either one of these to download a template view. I'm going to select my environment of targeting test, and then I'm going to select send, and we're going to speed things up here just a little bit. You're going to see here soon that the sequences are going to switch over to the routing. You can see here. Now it is showing errors in here. It's showing errors because this specific data source does not support sending result codes. And result codes in the application are how we are measuring if the send was successful or not. Now if I wanted to, I could download each of these with our download results button, or I could view the results here. Now, as this one does not support the result code, we can see in here the results of this. We can see no result code, the result message of success, and each of the individual transactions that added each of these values. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is custom fields. Custom fields are a little bit different. They rely on the developer portal set of API keys. Now we set them up in a similar way to the data source credentials, other than we say that these credentials are the API credential, and we still set it up a one-to-one relationship, one API key to one PCN or Plex and tenant. I'm going to select my credential I've set up here, and then I'm going to click into the custom fields box. This custom field box, it goes to Plex real time and pulls the list of available custom fields for all of the Plex standard objects. This list will grow over time as new custom fields are expanded in the platform. So for the demo today, I'm going to show you locations. Okay. I have some custom fields already set up here for locations, as we have a custom cycle count engine that uses custom fields, and this template here is pretty similar to the data source template that we saw earlier. It, however, has additional rows in the template. It has description, which is coming from the custom field setup. It has the unique row, which is also coming from the custom fields, which is essentially establishing where this record for this custom field has to be unique across all of the standard object for the custom field. Whether that this custom field is required or not, the allowed values for the custom fields, and the max length allowed for the custom fields. So I'm going to select download here, and I'm going to open up the template. The template has really the same information we saw in the preview there, other than each of the records only have values in the rows for the corresponding column. So if we don't have a max length for a field, it doesn't display on the Excel kind of upload field here. And there are some differences here in this template compared to the data source one. Now, custom fields are a little different. They operate on the principle of having key records. In the case of location, all of your custom fields are associated with the key of the location name. Now for parts, that's part key. Some of these have more than one key record on the custom field. And you can tell that in the upload template that it only has this type to display the key record, and then it is in the first part of the file. Okay. Now I've pre-populated a template here to upload into Plex. I'm going to select test here for my target. I'm going to select send, and then this is going to send all of our custom fields to Plex test here. And we're going to speed this up again here. Okay, that finished up there. To recap, DataMagik has 3 different run modes. We have data sources in a single, routines, and custom fields. Thank you for your time.